Welcome to Muriel's Murders. I'm Muriel, and I love true crime.
I'm Nick, and I'm not a fan.
Thank you for joining us. Each week, I force Nick to listen to me tell him a story of a true crime. This week, we go back to the early 1900s to talk about the rise and fall of the Holy Rollers cult, famous for sex, murder, I thought you would react, and, wait for it, rolling around on the ground.
Okay, well, you thought I would really get crazy when you said sex?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's about sex. Tell me everything, Muriel. I'm so excited.
Don't try to act like I don't have your number.
Yeah.
All right, now, Nick,
Yes.
like I said, how do you feel about the content of this one?
I feel pretty good about this. I'm, intrigued about cults.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds old school and old timey.
Yeah, it is.
And rolling around the ground, I can't say I'm against it. So
Yeah.
I would say I'm feeling pretty open to whatever this tale may be.
This boy is open for the poking. All right. Well, remember, this is a true story involving murder, violence, drugs, adult themes, etc. So if any listeners are like Nick and they don't want to hear about those kind of things, please consider listening to a different podcast.
And I'm sure some swear words will escape our sweet, sweet lips. So please consider yourself warned.
Mm-hmm. All right, Nikki, are you ready to hear this story?
No.
Okay, let's get started.
Okay, Muriel, I am indeed a consenting adult husband, so I am ready to hear this true crime tale.
Well, my guess is that you are going to roll over to the other side and like true crime at the end of this.
Okay, all right. You're very hyped. Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, great. So this story begins in Corvallis, Oregon in the early 1900s. And it starts with a man named Franz Edmund Creffield.
Okay.
So he came to Corvallis, Oregon in 1902 as a Salvation Army preacher.
Uh-huh.
In 1886, like late 1800s, the Salvation Army was targeting the Pacific Northwest, where, if you don't know this, listener, that's where Nick and I are from. We're from Seattle.
Yes, raised in Seattle. I've been to Corvallis, too. I think we went to a film festival together there.
We absolutely did when we first started dating.
I remember it fondly.
Well, the Salvation Army targeted the Pacific Northwest for its missionary work because of its, quote, extreme godlessness. I like that.
Okay, great. There's something very funny about the word extreme in that context.
Yeah, I think it had something to do with panhandlers or people who were miners or working in the hills.
Oh, so they were just kind of poor and didn't have a lot, and they were like, these godless people are satanic.
It was whoring and drinking and...
Oh, it's all the fun stuff.
Yeah,
okay,
it
so
was
it's
like the fun stuff.
The good kind of godlessness.
The old-timey fun stuff.
Okay,
right?
great.
But that's how Franz Creffield came to Corvallis, Oregon, because he was a preacher.
Okay.
He's German-born. He's kind of a strong German accent. He was 35, blonde, very smooth shaven, and pretty small, like a small guy, maybe about 5'3".
Okay.
He spent about a year in Corvallis, Oregon, and then he kind of disappeared. He was either quit or got fired from his Salvation Army gig, and he wandered around being this traveling Pentecostal preacher, which is like I don't want to get into the religions. I know some about them, but then I always mix them up, and my mistakes are always like really scandalous, I feel like.
Just offending people left and right.
I said something. I mixed up Presbyterian and Protestant to my mother, who's neither, and she was like, those are completely different.
It's like, whoa, my bad.
Sorry.
Okay, but he was...
Pentecostal's like a yelling one.
Okay.
More like evangelist, yelling one. I think that they're more about feeling and yelling than reading. That's my
So the Holy Spirit is something to be felt and experienced, not studied or understood.
That's my impression, but don't hold me to that.
Okay.
That's kind of my impression of what that's about. But anyway, he traveled around Corvallis for about a year, just disappeared, just traveling rogue evangelist preacher.
Okay.
Growing out his hair and his beard, which
Ooh.
became a signature look for him.
Nice.
Because you can't be a prophet, really, with like a bald-ass face, right?
I currently have been growing my hair out since the pandemic began. Haven't shaved my face, haven't cut my hair. I relate entirely.
You really do look pretty crazy. So he comes back at the end of 1903 to Corvallis, Oregon, and he immediately starts attracting his first followers, who are mostly defects from the Salvation Army. The original followers are going to have a really big part to play in the story, so I'm going to give you some names, but just try to remember these.
I will try.
Okay?
Yes, I'm not good at this, but I will put in some effort.
I think you're so good at this. All right, so among the first to convert were members of the Hurt family. So that is a very important family.
Okay.
22-year-old Maud Hurt, 21-year-old Frank, 16-year-old Eva May, and their mother, Sarah. Sarah is important.
Okay.
The Hurt family patriarch, Orlando Victor, or O.V. Hurt, was a really well-respected member of the community. He didn't love Crefeld, but he went along with these preachings.
Right.
His whole family wanted to go.
Right. His wife and his daughters are super into it.
His wife was really into it.
Okay, great.
So he did have a few families. He also recruited the Mitchell sisters, who didn't really have a strong family unit. So they were little free floaters. Donna, 23, and Esther, who was 15. So their mother died when they were really young, and their father left all of his 7 children in the care of others and dipped. I don't know. That happened so much, but it was just like, oh yeah, that's how we do things.
Yeah,
but
right.
You're like, what? You just left him? So
Great.
he's out of the picture.
Okay.
Donna was happily married to a man named Burgess Starr when Crefeld came into town. And Esther was 15. She was super shy, and she actually played piano for the Salvation Army. So she did have that connection.
Okay.
And then eventually a bunch of people joined, around 27 people in total. And the majority of Crefeld's disciples were women, but he did attract a handful of men, including a man named Brother Brooks, who was a Salvation Army captain.
Wow.
And actually, Brother Brooks was sent in early 1903 to investigate Crefeld's sect or cult or religion. So they actually told him to go up and watch what was going on.
Oh, so he was sent as a spy and then just joined?
Yes. He later said during a worship service he'd seen the devil approaching and wrapped in a network of snakes. So he threw his hat into a fire and joined the sect, becoming Crefeld's second in command. And in my notes I wrote, haha, what? I guess, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess that has a lot of meaning on some level.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it didn't sound like the devil enwrapped in snakes or whatever it was, like, disappeared or something.
Well, the weird thing about it, I guess to me, I would be like, yeah, the devil is here, run away.
Right.
Not, oh, better burn my hat and stay a while.
Yeah. What's up with burning the hat?
No idea, man.
It's just a power move back in the day.
Very early 1900s power move.
It's just like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm sorry, my hat is burnt. What can I say?
Well, that was my favorite part of any episode of Survivor. Sandra burnt Russell's hat. So I feel it.
Yeah.
So Crefeld services were pretty controversial. There's a lot of rumors that surrounded what he did. The big rumor was he would pull all the curtains shut and have these full-on moaning, chanting, tongue-speaking, evangelical yelling sessions. And at some point, he would yell, "Vile clothes, be gone," and would take off his clothes along with a bunch of the women who were there. And then he'd yell, "Roll, ye sinners, roll." And they'd all roll around on the floor naked with Crefeld and Brother Brooks, which seems like that would be awesome. But realistically, they weren't naked. That's not really. There's a lot of rumors in this. And we'll navigate it as best we can.
Sure.
Because people were freaked about them because they did pull the curtain shut before the meetings and then do these face down power grovel screaming things. And they did it so loud and so long and so often that the neighbors were completely freaked out by them.
Yeah, I could imagine. I also just love that the whole idea was, oh, this place is so godless. Let's go bring church to them. And then what they're doing sounds to me remarkably godless.
I mean, not to them. I mean, I think that it's just worship. You know what I mean? I mean, Crefeld also is really going rogue. So
yeah. Roll, ye sinners, roll.
I don't think that this is what the Salvation Army had in mind when they were thinking they would help this region become. I think Crefeld exacerbated some weirdness. You know
Got it. Yeah. Yes. I can picture it.
And he didn't have a particular ideology to the sect, especially in the early days. He was mostly about feelings over scripture. He wanted his people to give up material things, basically. So like fancy food and fancy clothes, and sort of restore themselves to being Adam and Eve, the beginning of, humans or whatever. But they were basically like hippies. They would walk around, they had no shoes, raggedy clothes, long hair flowing. And they were really easy to spot because this town is super small. So they would just be like, oh, there's those hippie guys. Walking around, man.
Okay, I got it.
And he also taught them that they would have to cut out any non-believers out of their lives. So we're getting to that culty stuff.
That's a straight up red flag.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a red flag.
So he doesn't want you to have anything good, and all people need to be gone from your past.
Right. And he didn't want to keep the fancy stuff. He just wanted to burn it and get it out of the way. That's what he likes to do. That's what we'll find out later. He loves to burn things.
Well, it sounds to me it's one of those moves where it's like, I just need you to know that I'm the only thing that's important.
Right. And I just need me.
Right.
And you.
Right.
We're a family. So that meant people were cutting out wives and husbands and children and parents, whatever. It didn't matter. If you were a non-believer, you could leave your kids. If they're non-believers, that's fine. Just leave them alone.
Sure.
So generally, a married couple would join the church. And then after a while, the husband would get tired of Crefeld's crazy, intense shit and leave. But for the wife, self-denial and bending to the will of a dude was a totally normal thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because in 1903, that was marriage.
Sure.
Women couldn't even vote.
Yeah.
And eventually she would just identify her missing in action husband as a non-believer and cut him off.
Right. That makes sense. And the husbands are like, I don't worship dudes. That's women's work.
I mean, kind of.
I'm used to getting worshipped.
Right.
Yeah.
Or at least like they're used to being in charge.
Yeah.
So having a guy who's like really bossing you around, the women were kind of cool with it.
Yeah. Right.
And the husbands were just like, that's my job.
Right. And now the women are like, and now I can just wear this like raggedy dress around and like not worry about having nice shoes and stuff.
Right. And the kids don't believe in it. I'm not going to make dinner. I'm just going to go for a walk and pick some flowers.
In fact, I don't even have those kids anymore. They're gone now.
They're dead to me.
All right.
Corvallis newspapers had taken to calling the Crefeld sect the Holy Rollers because of their worshiping practices, such as rolling on the ground. But Crefeld called them God's anointed.
All right.
And he believed in the second coming of Christ, basically kind of like the rapture, except for instead of going to heaven, the earth would become Eden again. And then Christ would come down to the new Eden, and that would herald this new period of time where we all are naked and running around and there's no sin or whatever.
I feel like this guy's really ahead of his time.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Why do you say that?
I don't know, because I thought cults and this sort of like hippy dippy, like we should just frolic around in flowers, didn't happen until like the 1960s.
No, I guess this guy was thinking about stuff. I mean, he seemed pretty cool.
Yeah, just some short German man.
Yeah, right. And he, of course, his followers are mostly ladies, so he did name the church the Bride of Christ Church. And then he called himself Joshua II.
Okay.
As in the second coming of Joshua.
Okay.
And I don't know, do you know who Joshua is?
No.
So Joshua's kind of like pre-Jesus.
Wow.
He's a little bit like kind of sub-Jesus. He's a major figure in Exodus. He's basically known in some Christian sects as being a precursor to Jesus, and in Islam he's seen as a successor to Muhammad. It's basically the closest you can get to calling yourself Jesus without really calling yourself Jesus. Because as much as these guys were down with Crefeld, I think probably if he started saying, oh, now you may call me Jesus, the cat would be out of the bag.
I got you.
Right?
Yeah.
He's trying to be subtle.
Yeah. He's walking that line.
Exactly. Also, just as a dumb thing that I found out, Mormons actually named the Joshua tree after Joshua because it looked like he was supplicating to God, like the tree.
Okay. I've seen lots of Joshua trees. I feel like that's a big imaginative leap on their part. But I also look at constellations and don't see whatever the hell the Greeks saw when they look up at the stars.
Right.
So.
People just had a lot of imagination back then.
Well, there's no TV. They're like, yeah, that cactus looks like he's supplicating to God.
That's right. Looks real supplicated. So eventually the town got fed up with all the moaning and the general shenanigans and told Crefeld to beat it. So he took his sack and he moved it to this big island called Kiger Island in the middle of the Willamette River. And it had no buildings on it or anything. It was just a wild ass island.
Yeah.
And they made wigwams and they pitched tents and had basically, rolling around sessions, but this time in the grass. And it was summertime, so it was like really nice and there were butterflies and it was really like idyllic.
I mean, that part of the country is so incredibly beautiful.
It's
the
really
Willamette
great.
Valley, that's like where all the good wine comes from out of Oregon.
Yeah.
That's like truly gorgeous country.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? What is a wigwam?
It's like a yurt or a tent or something. It's just it's a structure.
Okay.
Made out of branches that you can make if you were trying to be a hippie out in the woods.
Okay, I got
you. Didn't have like a power saw or something. And this is another place where there's another wild rumor that happened that I don't think is substantiated. But there's a rumor that while they were on the island, a man showed up with a camera and took pictures of everyone on the island. And, the Hurt family we were talking about is a really prominent family. And everybody knew who these followers were. And the rumor is that they were all naked and rolling around and he took pictures of them. And then people were so into it, they passed it around until the photo kind of disintegrated.
It went viral.
Right. But there's no proof.
Well, of course there's no proof. The photos turned to dust. This with all the fingers just trading underneath school desks in town. Just classic.
So the fall of 1903 came, and obviously if you've ever been to the Pacific Northwest, it comes with tons of cold weather and rain.
Sure.
Heavy rain. And the island basically becomes uninhabitable. So O.V. Hurt's wife, Sarah, invited the entire sect to stay with them at their home. They have this big, beautiful house in the middle of town.
Wow.
So the town was super shocked about this. She basically moved everyone in, and then the next day there's a sign hanging over the Hertz gate reading positively no admittance except on the business of God.
Whoa.
Which, it just gets really crazy.
Yeah, right.
So basically O.V. Hurt at this point had been tolerating Crefeld. His wife loves Crefeld. His daughters love Crefeld, blah, blah, blah. So he's like, whatever, I'll do it too.
Yeah. But
once they start moving into his house, he gets kind of into it.
Okay, great.
So he's like really starting to really be into it. He hangs the sign, blah, blah, blah. And he's solidly converted at this point.
Okay.
And on October 28th, Crefeld's followers dragged all of the furniture and possessions out of the house, lit a massive bonfire, and burned all his shit.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I have a quote from a newspaper about the bonfire because people were freaking.
And you're saying this is like the rich family in town?
Yes. They're like the fancy rich people in town. So this is a quote from the local Times, the Corvallis Times. Certain caprices of religious fanaticism have been manifested at the house that are so unusual as to suggest a condition bordering insanity. Walks about the house have been torn away. Much of the furniture of the house has been reduced to ashes in a bonfire held last night in the yard on the theory that God wills it. The shrubbery and fruit trees and all the flowers have been dug up and destroyed. The kitchen utensils have been beaten to pieces and buried. And then there's an ellipsis. It is reported that the house cats and dogs have been cremated.
They killed the pets?
Which people are saying that's not true. But what did happen is there was a dog that was running around bugging them. So then they threw that in the fire.
So they killed...
There's something going on.
And all the plants and trees and flowers?
Yeah, he's like, these are worldly possessions. You want to have a fine, rich house with all your stupid trees and flowers?
Yeah, he's like, don't you know this is going to be the Garden of Eden? And guess what's not in the Garden of Eden? Flowers or animals.
Well, that's a good point, Nikki. You are really on fire today.
Oh my God. So O.V. Hurt was like, I don't want any of my stuff anymore. I don't care about being rich and
Yeah, for about 5 seconds, he was like this.
Okay.
And then about 2 weeks later, he totally changed his mind.
He was pissed.
Everybody, I mean, well, I also think this is funny because the paper's just reporting on whatever this guy chooses to do. You know, it's not really a crime or anything.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have anything else to talk about.
Yeah, it's like the gossip pages or something.
Yeah, but
there's a huge fire and O.V. Hurt burnt all of his couches.
What is going on with that guy?
And then 2 weeks later, he was like, I miss my couches and gets pissed.
Basically.
Okay.
I mean, there's trouble in the sect. The town is not feeling this whatsoever. They don't like the bonfire. They don't like whatever's going on. They don't like that Crefeld is in the middle of the city because they keep trying to get rid of him. They don't want him to be. Before, when they were holding these meetings, they were in people's houses. So he didn't have a church.
Oh, really?
So that's part of the reason why the neighbors are really nervous, because he would be just going over when husbands were at work. He would be going over to their houses and holding these revival meetings. So part of the reason why they're closing the curtains is because there's no privacy. They're just in these homes.
Wow.
But then all the neighbors could hear them, you
Wow.
know, screaming and doing the power grovel thing. So that's why they told him, get out of here. And so then that's why they went to the island. And then they come back and now they're in the center of town in the rich man's house and they've just burned all of his stuff.
That is a special breed of manipulative, I believe, to like go into people's houses.
Well, it's not, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but that's also, I think that's what early Christians did. That's not an unheard of thing.
Okay.
That
All
people
right.
are doing religious activities in each other's homes. I mean, there was this kind of clandestine element about it because he would hold these meetings when the husbands were gone, the ones that don't like him. So, I mean, there was definitely some oddness about that.
I have another question for you.
What?
You've been calling it a sect a lot. So at this point, it's not a cult, or is...
It's, I don't know, dude. I mean, I think they called themselves Christian. They use a lot of Christian ideology, but clearly whatever Crefeld is describing didn't come out of the book of Revelations. He's just making it up.
Okay.
But I mean, I think he would call himself Christian. That's how they
Okay.
feel. And they feel like he's God and this is the Christian God and Jesus is a part of it. So they use a lot of the same imagery and feelings and things like that.
Got it. So you're calling it a sect because that's probably what they would consider themselves, and a cult would be like a judgmental outsider's view of what's going on.
Right. I wrote down the difference between a cult and religion just so I could think about it. And it's not that different, I don't think.
Okay.
Basically, they say with religion, it's belief in the worship of a superhuman or controlling power, like God or gods, right? Something that doesn't exist on this earth.
Okay.
So you're worshiping, I don't worship you, I worship the guy in the sky. And I think cults are more devotion directed toward a particular figure and object that exists here.
Okay.
So that's how they're distinguishing it. So if I worship you, then it's a cult. If
That'd
I
be
worship
nice.
God, then I worship you, Bubba. You know I do. If I worship you, it's a cult. If I worship God, it's a religion. That's
Yeah.
kind of the general idea of the difference between the two.
Okay.
So at this point, he's being super sneaky, right? Because he's calling himself Joshua, not Jesus.
Yeah.
But if he called himself Jesus,
Okay.
then it would be more solidly a cult.
But
it's a
he
wink at a
also,
cult.
it's, yeah, right. It's like, it's cult light. But he also, as far as I can tell, doesn't read the Bible. So he might have thought that he was calling himself Jesus and just got the J's mixed up. And then afterwards was like, damn it, I meant Jesus.
Look at you, you little sleuth. You got all these ideas. True crime extraordinaire. Jeez Louise, man.
All right.
Okay, so back to the story. So things are not going well for Crefeld. And the town decides to hold a sanity hearing. Oh, what is a sanity hearing, you may ask?
I ask.
So obviously on the frontier, there were very few services for mentally ill people. So the way the government tried to deal with that problem is in 1844, they started appropriating $500 for different regions. I don't know exactly how that works, maybe the cities, for the care of the insane. So any justice of the peace could conduct a sanity hearing and declare someone a lunatic. And then on the frontier, they would hold an auction. And the insane person would go to anyone in the town who made the lowest bid for room and board of that person. So you would go to these sanity auctions or these sanity hearings. So somebody would be declared a lunatic, and then you'd go and you would bid on to get some of that $500. And then you could take the lunatic back to your farm and basically just work them, I'm assuming. I don't think this is very nice.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying. They're like, oh, we have a crazy person here. And someone's like, hey, I'll take care of them for $10.
Right. And I think that person would probably keep them off the street and keep them fed. And in best case scenario, right, they're like, I could do it for a year on $50. Maybe they could. Maybe that's enough money.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was reading about this, one of the bids was for $1. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that guy just bid $1 to get a slave. Like,
yeah, right.
That does not seem super reasonable to me. But that's what people would go. They would go and bid on these people and get them back on their farm.
And you could anyone could be like, we have to have a sanity hearing for Muriel. And then you would just have to go and prove you're not insane.
Right. And then if I was insane, somebody could purchase me for whatever low bid that would supposedly cover my room and board. But there was no threshold that they would say, that doesn't work. $1 for a year? Like nobody would say that. They could bid anything they want.
Do we hear 75 cents?
Right. Or if you go to one of these sanity auctions and nobody shows up, you could bid $400, which is way more than what you'd need to keep this person. Then you just get a bunch of money.
Oh, damn.
But it's just an incentive to keep people remotely sheltered. That's what they used to do.
Okay. It also seems like a very good incentive. Like, look, you can't act wild.
Yeah, right.
Everyone needs to be sort of sane because guess what? We'll sell you into indentured servitude.
Right. I mean, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's horrible. Okay, so what happened? Did Creffield get deemed insane?
No. It's fine.
Did he pull the judge into his cult?
Basically, they just said, you're not crazy, but you gotta get the hell out of town. We're over it. They were just like, you need to leave.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Ovi hurt, totally changed his mind. He threw everyone out of the house, and Creffield and Brother Brooks skipped town. Donna Starr, right? Donna Mitchell, she was hauled back to Portland by her husband, Burgess. Esther Mitchell, the 15-year-old piano player, and Donna's sister, she was committed to the Oregon Boys and Girls Aid Society, which is also another one where they were like, wayward girls and boys. And you take them and then they go immediately into indentured servitude.
Oh, yeah.
It just was like, what else are you going to do, man?
Right. So it's basically so they considered her an orphan, right? Because her mother had died and her father skipped town. And they were like, now we're going to bring you into our aid society, aka go work the fields.
Well, her brother, she had two older brothers, and George and Perry, and they were the ones who sent her because they were like, you are not acting right.
Okay. All right.
They were just mad that she was hanging around with Creffield.
Sure.
And when she went there, she was diagnosed with acute religious mania and of possessing a mind almost unhinged by religious fanatics.
Wow.
So she was in trouble, boy.
Oh my God.
So Creffield and Brooks disappeared for like a month. And then they came back around Christmas time.
Oh, yeah. They just showed up.
They just showed back up again. And they had about 10 followers who'd remained loyal. And what they decided to do that they thought was really slick is they just rented a house across the river, like right directly across the river from Corvallis.
Oh, so they're just like, look, we didn't come back. We're still gone.
And it's but everyone could see them.
Yeah, of course.
So everyone was saying, well, we told you to get the fuck out of town. What are you doing out here? Obviously, tensions are high. And on the evening of January 4th, just a few days after they got there, a group of men marched to the house. They snatched up Creffield and Brother Brooks, marched them through the streets of Corvallis, took them into the woods, and tarred and feathered them, which is really drastic.
Oh, okay. Wow. I thought you were going to say they murdered them right there. I was
No.
And they were murdered. End of podcast. Tarring and feathering, from my imagination, is just so incredibly drastic. I got tar on my shoe one time, and it just ruined my day.
Yeah.
And it was like one little bit of tar.
It's pretty drastic. You have to take a turpentine bath, and it's really caustic. It's super hard to do. So they're not out there murdering fools, but they are like, get out of the town. We don't like you.
Yeah, you are now covered in tar and feathers.
Now go. So after this, poor Brother Brooks just disappears from the story. He's out. That was enough for him to decide that this is not his own religious calling.
Yeah.
So he dressed like a chicken. He ran into the woods. But
and then he became the man enwrapped in snakes or something for someone else's religious awakening story.
yes, exactly. But Miss Sarah Hurt, remember O.V. Hurt's wife, and her daughter Maud went into the woods, found the prophet. They found him kind of naked and hiding and covered in tar. And they brought him back. They stripped all the tar off of his body, and they immediately married him to Maud the next day.
Oh my God. Wow. It was just something about the tar and feathering that really turned Maud on, huh?
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with that.
I like how you're now slyly calling him the prophet.
I mean, he is kind of the prophet.
Yeah.
I mean, he has a lot of power in this situation. And when he married Maud, it raised a bunch of eyebrows, but was ultimately this relief, right? Because townspeople thought he had finally settled down and stopped being a crazy ass. He was, they're married now. He's not going to be so weird. People just thought, once you get married, you're going to have some kids and you're going to be chill.
Right. Like, we tarred and feathered him. He's settling down. He's going to be good to go.
Yeah, exactly. But immediately, Joshua started crazy assing all over again. So this is all happening in January. He's married. A few weeks go by. And then by February, he had sent Maud to go live with her parents. Just sent her back. And then he had sort of wandered around and drifted up to Portland, where he reconnected with this small number of exiled followers from Corvallis, including Esther Mitchell's married sister, Donna. And he immediately got everyone singing and shouting and rolling around the ground in no time. Crefeld had also begun to introduce this doctrine of ritual purification. So what he was starting to tell people is that souls were purified through sexual intercourse.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. All right.
So
I see what he did there.
He had sex with Donna. Of course.
Of course.
Why not? Immediately went up there and had sex with Donna. So adultery is a crime in Oregon at the time, like a big jailable offense crime. And when Donna's husband figured out she was sleeping with Crefeld, he filed a criminal complaint. But before he could be arrested, Crefeld disappeared again. So he's gone. Nobody can find him.
He hit it and quit it.
He hit it and quit it, disappeared like a puff of, I don't know, Holy Spirit smoke. So there's this massive police hunt now underway. People were giving all this money to the police to try to like support this police hunt. O.V. Hurt gave them $150, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, right. You could buy like 12 homeless people for that.
Isn't that wild? But basically, because everyone wanted to capture Crefeld. They don't want Crefeld around. They tried to tar and feather him. He would disappear. And so finally now they have a reason to get him behind bars. But so this is really a big, hot, massive manhunt. They're looking for him. In the meantime, effects of holy rollerism had mysteriously returned to Corvallis. Crefeld's remaining followers had started shouting and indiscriminately rolling around together on bare floors. Women were again neglecting their wifely duties, and they weren't doing their homemaking duties. Started wandering around the streets barefoot. It was mostly like a hint, but it started really really coming back.
I feel like it's sort of hard to like subtly start screaming and drop on the floor and start rolling around.
You just be like, God, I'm glad that guy's gone. That's so great. I'm glad he's gone. And then somebody would just drop to the floor and start screaming. Like, well, all right, we're just gonna let that go.
Yeah,
it's just one lady.
Just a quick little slip up. Margaret just had a relapse.
Exactly. I think it started like that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, no, damn it, there's Margaret. She doesn't have braids in her hair.
The Corvallis Times, again with the Corvallis Times, accused Crefeld of, quote, leading weak women into a state of mind where there was more frenzy than reason. I thought this was interesting because the Times is assuming this lack of agency in the women. And it's the same type of thing that led the women to Crefeld. Like, the men didn't like studying with Crefeld because Crefeld really subjugated everyone.
Yeah.
But there is some freedom in it.
Sure.
He offered the women a chance to break from societal norms and to walk around barefoot and not have to like really care so much about what their husband wants.
Or even care about their husbands at all.
Right.
If he wasn't a believer.
Right. And I can see that representing some level of freedom. And then the Times is coming out and saying, oh, well, Crefeld is controlling their weak minds. But Crefeld isn't even there. What you have is a town of women who are rebelling.
Right. Totally. It's like, if the women are weak-minded, it's because their society has forced them to play these like, subjugated roles.
Right. I mean, I'm going to nitpick you or whatever. They're not weak-minded.
Right.
It's just a matter of what opportunities does the society give you. And if somebody is walking by and saying, hey, you don't want to clean the house, don't clean the house.
Yeah.
You think your kids are annoying, they don't believe in God, don't pay attention to your kids.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. And I think you're great.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's a cool alternative in some ways. I mean, there's nothing weak-minded about that. That takes a lot of balls.
Yeah, totally,
You know?
totally.
Walk around Oregon with those shoes on? No, thank you.
Yeah, these women are about it.
So Creffield spent 3 months at large in total. And things really started to escalate in Corvallis. His followers began to spend their days lying on the floor, face down in protest.
Whoa.
They were praying. They were saying they were receiving messages from God. And basically, friends and family of these women had them committed to the asylum.
Damn.
Most of them. We're not talking about a massive amount of people. We're talking about 9 people. But that's where they went. The girls went to the Boys and Girls Aid Society, and the women went to the State Insane Asylum in Salem, which was not like a really awesome place.
Yeah, I could imagine it not being super tight back then.
Right.
And was it all still like the fanatical, religious, acute insanity or whatever?
Yeah, that was basically it. They're like, oh, you got too religious. You need to be religious, right? Or else you're not a good woman. But you can't be too religious. This is out of hand, guys.
God, I wonder when they stopped diagnosing people with that phrase. Because there seems to me like there's still some people that could have that, diagnosis put on them.
Well, I think people just have more freedom now. Like women, I think, used to be committed for having really bad PMS and periods. You used to be able to be committed for having too much sex.
Yeah, right.
Like it's definitely different now. There's a
Sure.
little more rights, I think, is the main thing. But out of the 9 people committed, one of them was O.V. Hurt's wife, Sarah.
Damn.
Yeah.
The head honcho.
Yeah, the head honcho. So one day, O.V. Hurt's young son was crawling under the house looking for worms for a fishing trip, and he found Creffield hiding under the house.
So he's just been there
The whole time.
just holding church service from the crawl space.
I don't even know if he was doing that, but just his presence like emboldened people to start acting crazy.
Uh-huh.
So when the cops pulled him out from under the house, he was completely naked. He was covered in hair, filthy. He's a super hairy dude, apparently. The book Murder Out Yonder says he was, quote, most wonderfully endowed by Mother Nature, which I thought was hilarious because it sounds like they say he's having a giant penis situation.
I also love the word wonderfully endowed is it's particularly hilarious. Oh my God. Yeah, well, he is a sex god, so, how couldn't he be?
It just seems suspect to me, but I think that's very funny that that's how they described him.
It's suspect to you how?
I don't know. It's just like people are just, they're like, how come women follow this guy?
It must be because he has a giant dong.
Right, but they just like him because he lets them walk around barefoot and act like however they want to act.
Yeah. Oh my God. I hope to God he wasn't doing the purification ritual underneath that house.
Well, nobody knows really. He had been living under the house for 2 months, and he'd been living off of the scraps that Sarah Hurt and a few others had been feeding him. But after they were all institutionalized, he was starving to death.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So he gets hauled into court for the whole adultery ritual purification thing he did with Donna, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he unhesitatingly admits guilt. So his position was that the adultery had been a part of a vital God-ordered purification ritual. So he was super standing behind that choice. There's a really fun quote from Murder Out Yonder where Creffield addresses this. So they ask him about it, and he says, Christ broke the Sabbath day, and the Jews put him to death. I've broken your laws, and you will undoubtedly do the same to me. Like Christ, however, I will rise again, and ye all shall suffer. So that's his reaction when they say, hey, man, you had sex with Donna, man. That was illegal. And he's like, I will smite you down.
I feel like he really hasn't read the Bible.
That's what I'm saying. Honestly, I read these quotes and I'm like, I don't think you read the Bible.
Yeah.
That's fine. But,
Yeah. I also love that he was just like, yeah, I'm guilty of being too Christian. Okay. I'm guilty of doing what God told me to do. And now I'm resurrected. It's like, no, actually, Joshua or whatever you call yourself, that's not what resurrection is. You have to actually die to be resurrected.
Yeah, right, exactly. And he's like, yeah, and I'm sure you're going to put me to death. They're like, no, we're putting you in prison for 3 years. Yeah, right. Stop. You're not that special.
So did he go to jail for 3 years?
Listen, dude, I'm finishing my thought. Okay.
Sorry. I'm just very excited.
Jesus Christ, you are excited. I do like that. Okay. So, basically, he's being very bold about this. And that begs the question, who else has he purified?
Right.
This is a lot of when these rumors started about this being a massive sex cult.
Yeah.
There's not really a lot of evidence that it was actually a sex cult, but this is definitely where some of those thoughts started.
Yeah, and he's already been described as being wonderfully endowed by Mother Nature.
He has a giant dong. But basically, people thought about all these women refusing to speak to their husbands and fathers and praying and rolling around in someone's house, under the supervision of this adulterer who saw nothing wrong with having sex with someone else's wife.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't God order him to purify other women too?
Yeah.
I mean, given the evidence, it'd be really hard to think otherwise.
Yeah, right. I have a question. So he's got arrested for having sex with another man's wife, but is it a crime for him to have cheated on his actual wife, on his wife?
I think people just don't think that women matter.
Yeah.
Donna didn't get in trouble, and his wife, they don't care. So it's mostly Big Dongo over here.
Yeah, right. Basically, it's a big dongo. All right. Okay.
This is also around the time that the rumors really got started about Crefield's alleged plan to impregnate one of his followers on behalf of God. So there's this story kind of floating around in the lore and the ether that as this religion develops, Crefield decides that he needs to impregnate one of his followers so it can be the second coming of Jesus. So he has to find designated Mary.
Oh, I love how it started with, Jesus is coming back, so we have to get ready. And he's like, actually, Jesus is coming back, so I have to have sex with you now.
Right, exactly. And so now he's Joshua and Joshua and what's Mary's husband name?
Joseph?
Joseph.
We're like talking trash about someone else not reading the Bible. We're like, who's the guy?
Man, I'm not Christian. So it's possible that this rumor was true, but it seems like it was made up. It took the jury 12 minutes to render a guilty verdict. And then Joshua gave this insane rambling speech in which he misquoted several Bible verses and called the saints to witnesses.
Of course.
And the judge sentenced him to 2 years in prison in Salem, Oregon.
Wow.
So he did get that prison sentence for donking his bong.
Donking his bong.
So while Crefield served his time, his followers were gradually discharged from all these asylums and returned to their homes and families in Corvallis. Crefield's wife, Maud Hurt, divorced him in July and moved to Seattle to live with her brother and her sister-in-law. And things had pretty much returned to normal in Corvallis. Rollerism is dead. Everyone is normal again. They're wearing shoes, braiding their hair, whatever.
Okay, great.
So Crefield was released 15 months later without the beard and the wild hair. So his prophet hair is gone. And he bummed around Los Angeles and San Francisco. He kind of went down to California while he's growing out his beard again, because you can't be a prophet without a beard.
Yeah, that is true.
That's true. And then he started writing letters to the now 17-year-old Esther Mitchell.
Uh-oh.
So we know for sure that he was asking Esther to start gathering his followers again. He really is freaked out about going to Corvallis because he knows that they're mad at him.
Yeah.
But he does start using her to start reaching out to different congregants.
Got it.
Trying to let them know he's out. Daddy's out of jail. Daddy's coming home, right?
Yeah, okay. So she's scouting for him.
Right. The other thing that may or may not happened is that he told her she would be the second mother of Christ. So if anyone was the second mother of Christ in that rumor, in that structure of the religion, it was definitely Esther.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay.
If that was true, it was definitely
Yeah,
Esther.
he was like, I know Jesus was born of a virgin the first time, but the second time, you're going to have sex with me in order to have Christ return.
That's right. I mean, I just preached the Bible just a little bit different, baby. So then, after he talks to Esther, he sends O.V. Hurt a letter. And I'm going to read this to you because this is his mindset.
Okay, good.
You know, he's still too afraid to go to Oregon, by the way. So just remember that.
Okay.
God has resurrected me. I have now got my foot on your neck. God has restored me to my own. I will return to Oregon and gather all of my followers. Place no obstruction in my way, or God will smite you. Joshua 2. So he's talking a lot of shit for a 5'3" guy with a giant dog.
Joshua, too fast, too furious, coming to your neck.
I mean,
this foot this summer.
He's so sassy.
I know.
You know, it's like he acts like he doesn't have any money. He just got out of jail. His followers are gone. Brother Brooks is gone. His wife divorced him. And he's writing O.V. Hurt this like, I've got you just where I want you letter.
Yeah, right.
But turns out he kind of did.
Okay.
So the next thing he does is he writes a letter to his ex-wife, Maud, O.V. Hurt's daughter. Who immediately said she'll remarry him if he just comes and gets her in Seattle. I've been waiting for you. Come back. I'll remarry you. So Joshua heads straight up the coast from California, bypassing Corvallis, Oregon. Esther's doing his dirty work. He's not going back there because he's freaked, man. He knows he's going to get his ass beat. Goes straight up to Seattle, marries Maud, and then his intention at this point is to return to Corvallis to start a colony bigger and badder than anything the town had ever seen. So he needs cash to purchase some land. He wants to go and purchase some real Eden-esque land on the coast. And he convinces Maud's brother, who's O.V. Hurt's son, he convinces Maud's brother and wife to sell their house in Seattle and give him the cash.
That is some pimp shit.
That's some big dong energy. So with that cash, he purchases a strip of oceanfront land south of Waldport, Oregon. So Frank Hurt and his wife and Maud, all super down with this cult, were to go ahead to the property while Joshua gathered his faithful from Corvallis. He never really goes straight into Corvallis, but he lurks, right?
Right, he's got Esther doing his dirty work.
Right, he's trying to deal with Esther and do all these things. And then they're all supposed to meet back at the property together. And his plan was to threaten everyone in Corvallis with the wrath of God if they didn't agree to come down to his land.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's his big plan. He also then allegedly cursed San Francisco, Corvallis, Portland for some reason, and also Seattle. Like, he's mad.
Yeah, okay, great. He's just cursing full cities at this point.
Right. He's saying they're all Sodoms. I think he's using Sodoms in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Because he probably can't read. And he's saying, if you don't come down to my new Eden 2 with Joshua 2, you're all going to hell, plus all these cities I don't like.
Okay, great.
Right?
Yeah.
So they all go their separate ways. And then a few days later, they meet up in Newport, Oregon on the 18th of April.
Okay.
And this is when Crefeld finds out that San Francisco had been decimated by an earthquake. It was the great 1906 San Francisco earthquake.
Oh, damn.
So the city had burned after the earthquake. It killed an estimated 3,000 people.
Jesus.
They had left about 400,000 people homeless. And he just looked at everybody and he goes, I knew it.
Oh,
Because it's like now his curse is coming true.
Right.
Then there's the trickle of women. They all start coming down.
Word's getting out.
Word's getting out. Cora Hartley and her daughter Sophia join them. Esther Mitchell comes down. There's a girl named Addie Bray, Olive Sandell. There's all these people, right?
Yeah.
And Frank Hurt is actually one of the only men who's down there. But they're all kind of down there starting to set up camp.
Yeah.
Somebody brought their 5-month-old baby.
Jesus.
They were coming down.
Oh, no.
Esther's sister Donna, remember, who got in trouble with adultery?
Yeah.
She wasn't the second Mary, but he did do it with her. She snuck out of her home in the middle of the night, leaving her husband and 3 children.
Damn.
And then she boarded a train from Portland to Corvallis. because she's up in Portland now.
Yeah.
She got exiled. She was in big trouble.
Right.
And then before leaving, she left him this note, and it said, quote, "I have taken about $3.50 of your money, but I guess I have been worth that much to you. It is not enough to pay my fare, and I will have to walk to the place I am going." And then after getting off the train at Corvallis, she walked 70 miles across mountain channels.
That lady is such a gangster.
I know, because that's a salty ass thing to say.
I mean, that note is basically like, I'm stealing from you. I'm not sorry. You're welcome that it's not more. I should have taken more from you. Don't even act like you care about me. And I'm going to go, you want to know how much I can love? You want to know what you're missing out on? I'm going to walk 70 miles barefoot to a man who's wonderfully endowed. Jesus.
So all of these women are kind of trickling out of the town, and there were about 50 girls and women in total.
Damn.
And maybe 2 guys. So you're going down to Newport, Oregon, then they're taking a ferry to go to the Yaquina Bay, and then you travel by foot to the Garden of Joshua. That's what he was calling it. So it's this really epic journey.
Sure.
And a lot of the women walked it because they didn't have the money.
Wow.
Because he said, get rid of your worldly possessions. What they going to do? Sell the pin he burned?
Yeah, right. Jesus. It's like, damn it, Joshua, couldn't we have kept our boots?
We should have kept something. That was not a good plan. So they get down there, and Joshua had somehow had this big pile of bathrobe type things, like these robes. So he hands them all out, and then he has the women burn all their clothes in a giant bonfire. He loves those things.
He loves bonfires.
And the living conditions were really crappy in the Garden of Joshua. They lived in huts, and they cooked food over open fires. It was just cold and miserable. It's Oregon. I know. I grew up in Seattle. Even the summers aren't nice,
Yeah, right. Totally.
And at this point, the men of Corvallis are starting to freak. They're just freaking. The fathers, the brothers, and the sons all sort of start to venture out to find their women because they're gone.
Right.
And at first they're like, well, good riddance. And then they're like, but where did they go? And they're like, oh no, they're doing it with this guy.
The German man is back. He's so small.
Creffield. One of the dads got really close to catching Creffield. He headed down to Newport, and he bought a gun, and he's hot on Creffield's tail. And he runs down to the ferry, and he misses it by a second. And he looks up, and he sees on the deck of the ferry, there's a 5'3" bearded man surrounded by a bathrobe women. So obviously he's like,
Yeah, as the ferry's slowly departing the dock.
I mean, it's funny. If you've ever been on a ferry in the Pacific Northwest, they are not known for their speed.
They're so slow. And then I've missed ferries just by a few minutes. It's so frustrating.
It's so annoying. You could run and jump on the stupid deck for how fast it's going.
Yeah.
So he's standing there, and he raises the gun to shoot the prophet. It's a full gun. And he shoots it 6 times, and the gun just clicks. And Creffield is swept away slowly into the fog, and all the women see it. They see that Creffield cannot be shot by a gun. What actually happened was the guy who sold him the gun sold him the wrong kind of bullets. So that was just a bad luck thing. But of course now they're like, oh my God, he destroyed San Francisco, and now he cannot be killed.
I do believe that Creffield is a maniac, but I have yet to be convinced.
Can't say it's not God.
Yeah, I don't know that he's not God.
Right. I understand that. And maybe some of the women thought the same thing.
Right.
We don't know he's not God.
Right.
So this incident with the gun thing really galvanized the Corvallis men to head over to Newport, get to the garden, and murder Joshua. Joshua too. They're mad. Yeah. And also now they kind of know where he is a little better. They know where the ferry's going. They kind of have a better sense of where they're going. So they start getting posses together and heading out. Creffield kind of gets it. He's like, okay, if there's going to be a crazy ass dude on the dock where the ferry is departing, then they probably kind of know where I am.
Yeah, they're going to be coming after me any day now.
Right. So he departs. He grabs Maud and he makes his escape. He heads back up to Seattle. Now, Donna and Esther Mitchell, remember, have a brother.
Okay.
That brother George, who committed Esther to an asylum twice so far.
Right.
So he's not feeling this whole thing.
Right. And then his brother is one that got cheated on by Donna.
Right.
So he's been in the mix and...
Well, no. Donna's his sister.
Yep, of course he is. You literally just explained that. Okay, I'm paying attention and I know who George is. Got it. Okay.
George Mitchell. George Mitchell wants a piece of Creffield, right? Creffield's been writing his sister's letters, talking about how they're the second Mary, he's going to impregnate them. He's been having sex with Donna. You know, he's like, I sent them to the asylum. It didn't fix this thing. This is insane. How do I get these girls to stop doing it with this tiny man with a massive dong, right? They're just like, this has to stop. So when George Mitchell arrives in Newport looking for Creffield, he finds out he has just missed the prophet and his wife Maud. But he also finds out they had purchased tickets to Seattle.
Okay.
So now he knows where they're going.
Yeah, so he's hot on their trail.
Right. So he buys tickets and he makes his way into Seattle. He gets down into the streets of Seattle and he just starts stalking the streets looking for Joshua too, right? He's staying in boarding houses and he's basically hunting this guy.
Wow.
Yeah. In the morning on May 7th in 1906, Creffield and his wife Maud were dressed in Christian Orthodox clothes and they're strolling along 2nd and Cherry in downtown Seattle.
Been there many times.
Many times, right in the heart of downtown. And as they stood outside Quick's drugstore, George Mitchell walks up behind the pair and shoots the prophet Joshua II point blank in the head.
Damn.
So he dies instantly. And then when police arrived, George was smoking a cigar.
Oh, so this guy hunted him for days.
Yeah. Shot him.
Did not hesitate.
Murdered
him. Cold blood in the streets, daylight, broad day.
In the middle of the morning, yeah.
And then just over his still warm body starts smoking a cigar.
Yeah, and Maud is losing her mind. The cop walks up and she just screams, This man is my husband, Joshua the prophet. He will arise in 3 days and walk. And the cop is just like, what is going on? There's a guy, he's dead. This guy is smoking a cigar. He looks super happy. And this lady is saying this guy is going to come back to life. Like, they just don't really.
Right. It was
and it's Seattle. They don't know who Creffield is.
Yeah. And he was just wearing like Orthodox clothing. They just seemed like nice, quiet people.
Yeah. They're like, oh man, Oregon guys are back here. I hate people from Oregon. They're so crazy, man. George, before the trial, just sends O.V. Hurt a quick telegram, just letting him know he had finally killed the prophet and that he was in jail in Seattle. So O.V. Hurt sort of spreads that word. And people really did come up to support him in the trial. They were reporting in Corvallis and the Oregon papers all about the trial. It was a huge West Coast event.
Wow.
Creffield, for his part, did not really get a great send-off as a prophet. His followers protested and Maud protested, but basically the city just took his body, stuffed his bullet wound with cotton, and then buried him in a cemetery in Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle. They just wouldn't. I don't think they had the money to get the body returned to Corvallis or do anything with it, so they just buried him. And he was Jesus.
So, like against Maud's wishes.
Yeah, basically. So George Mitchell is charged with the murder of Franz Creffield in Seattle, and the trial is about to start. But the Garden of Joshua was largely forgotten. You know, Maud is up here. Franz Creffield is dead.
Yeah.
But these girls are still in Oregon somewhere on the coast without any sort of map to find them.
Yeah, right. And they're just like a remote, like no one has probably told them. Do they even know?
They don't even know. They don't know what's going on. There's no post office over there.
Yeah, totally.
And it's April. It's probably freezing.
Yeah.
Sucks.
And all they have are their little robes.
Yeah.
You know?
Things are going badly there. They say a timberman named George Hodges was around the area of the Garden of Joshua, checking out like a stand of Douglas firs that he was thinking about buying. It was really cold and windy, and he walks through these trees and he stumbles upon this small group of women, and they're camped out on the beach, and they're just clearly, obviously starving. Like their faces are gaunt. They're wearing these bathrobes, and they tell him, you know, we're the followers of Joshua the prophet who has recently destroyed San Francisco.
Yeah.
And this guy Hodges reads the papers. He knows what happened in San Francisco, and he kind of knows Creffield was shot in Seattle.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want to freak them out. He just kind of asks them well, where's Joshua? Where do you think he is? And they say, oh, he's off in British Columbia. He's looking for a new home for us. And he says, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Joshua Creffield, he's dead. He's been shot in Seattle a week ago. And the women just start laughing and telling him, no one can kill Joshua with a gun. Dummy.
Yeah, you stupid lumberjack.
You idiot. He's God.
He's in what? He was in Vancouver trying to do what for them? Why?
Buy more property, a better property for them to go move to.
So he straight up lied to them.
Yeah, and British Columbia is going to be colder than Oregon.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know what they think, what an improvement on that.
The sunny, warm lands of Canada.
Come on, man. But, Hodges didn't know what to do.
Sure.
So he goes, okay, yep, ha, 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 no guns killed this guy. And then he just went back to Corvallis and was like, all right, guys, they're by the stand of Douglas first.
Yeah, right.
So that's how the last of the girls were taken back to Corvallis, Oregon.
Bring some jackets when you go pick them up and maybe a couple of Cliff Bars because the girls are hungry.
They're hungry, believe me. Meanwhile, the trial in Seattle is underway. And there is a parade of people with grievances coming up from Oregon. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got something to say. There's tons of witnesses. Mm-hmm. There's a man named William D. Gardner of the Oregon Boys and Girls Aid Society who definitely dealt with a bunch of girls that ran away, including Esther twice. Mm-hmm. And he talks about, from his perspective, he says that they all talked about having sex with Creffield.
Oh, wow.
So that came out of trial. They still don't know for sure if it's true because this guy is just some guy. It's not like he's a trained therapist. It's like, then he goes, oh, really? That's awful. Let me go sell you into indentured servitude for a while. Get your mind right. You know what I mean? Right. But he did say it at trial. Uh-huh. And he talked a lot about the second mother thing or the second Mary thing, mm-hmm. how Esther was told that she was the second Mary. Yeah. And different people in Corvallis talked a lot about how Esther would just get sent away and come straight back and go right back to Creffield. There was no way to deter her. They just couldn't keep her away. So they talked a lot about her religious mania. And for her part, Esther came up for the trial and she sat emotionless watching the trial for days. She was there for the whole thing.
Wow.
But the parade of witnesses was really great. One example of what people were saying was they testified about the broken home that was caused by Creffield. Mm-hmm. So this dad took the stand and just started talking about how his wife and his daughter ruined everything. And the grievances are his daughter dropped out of college, which is a big deal, because Creffield said knowledge is stupid and don't get educated.
Yeah, definitely don't read the Bible.
No, but then he said she destroyed her graduation dress.
That was the biggest tragedy of the scenario.
It was and then she destroyed her graduation dress. That's insane.
Right.
My wife sewed that dress for her. And then he says his wife destroyed all their fancy dishes and refused to cook for him, which I just think is funny because it's a dress and some dishes and she wouldn't cook. And he's like, he ruined my life.
Yeah. So the whole point of the trial is to say that this murder is entirely justified. That he took the law into his own hands and George Mitchell is a hero. That's what you're saying. Yeah,
I mean, and the press covered it like he was a complete hero. The trial was a circus.
Yeah.
George Mitchell was totally revered. And women were actually coming to the trial to give him flowers. To come and lay down flowers next to him while he was sitting there. The judge had to tell them to stop.
Sounds like a new sex cult is being birthed at the trial.
And George Mitchell's feeling it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Course,
it's oh God.
Yeah. All these guys just secretly want to be Creffield.
Right, exactly. Esther Mitchell didn't hesitate to let the public know what she thought of her brother. She said the quote that she had in the newspaper is, I hope my brother will have time to repent of his sins before they hang him.
Whoa. I
believe he should be hanged after he is given a chance to repent. So she's publicly stone-faced at the trial telling the press, I just hope that, he can save himself before he dies.
Wow.
So she's definitely not saying, thank you, brother. I love you.
Right. Everyone's like, this brother honored his sister. And the sister's like, I hate you. Yeah. Why did you do that, you idiot?
You killed God. So the press was super forgiving. They loved him. Uh-huh. The Oregon papers loved him. Seattle papers loved him. They super sensationalized the whole story. People thought he was really, really important. Uh-huh. The Seattle Times actually said that instead of prosecuting him, they should give him a medal give George Mitchell a medal for what he did. Because, quote, if there were more men like George Mitchell, there would be fewer human beasts and still fewer broken, ruined women in insane asylums and on the streets. And George basically didn't have a defense. He just said that Joshua had ruined his 2 sisters.
Yeah.
He said he ruined Esther and Donna publicly. So George killed Crefeld to preserve his family honor. That's all.
That's so weird.
So on the afternoon of July 10th, the jury returned with a verdict of not guilty.
Damn.
Not even like temporary insanity.
Yeah.
Just straight up not guilty.
Wow.
And everyone in the courtroom cheered. It was this huge thing. They're so excited. They're applauding. George Mitchell came out and made a statement to reporters. And this is the quote. "I am particularly thankful that the people of Oregon rallied to my support. Those who came up here to aid me did me a service I can never forget. I want to thank the Oregon papers for the fairness they showed in telling the whole story. I am glad the Oregon people know all about it, and I feel they sympathize with me." It's like, obviously, dude. Yeah, and then Esther just takes off without even talking to him. She's gone. She takes off like a shot. So that's the way it goes, man.
Damn. Okay. So I guess he's Superman now.
Yeah.
Or Batman
he's
or something.
Batman, Superman. He's Teflon, baby.
Oh my God.
They're like, you can murder that guy and we love you.
Yeah, totally. You can hunt him down over state lines.
Yeah. So a couple days later, George Mitchell and his 2 other brothers, they're heading home, right? They're done with the trial. And they're hanging out in the train station. They're celebrating and waiting for the train at King Street Station when one of them sees Esther. She's hanging out near a pillar in this really nice new outfit with a sailor hat on. And, they're like, "Come over here. Don't just sit there and look at us. I mean, You're here, you're lurking. But it's like, if you're here, that we're family and we love you."
Yeah, and we came all the way up here to murder your boyfriend.
So they say, come over. And she's pretty quiet, but she does come over. And she ends up taking George's hand. And right before he boards the train, she pulls out a pearl-handled revolver and shoots George in the back of the head, killing him instantly.
Oh, Esther. Sweet little Esther, the 15-year-old piano player from the Salvation Army.
She shot him right in the back of the head. So she's immediately arrested. And she says she had to kill George because he killed God in the form of Joshua the second.
Oh, my God.
So she had to kill him in return.
When you first started this story, sorry, I know, but I was like, okay, it's a cult. I was thinking everyone drinks the Kool-Aid. There's some weird ritualistic midsummer type deaths or something. This is all just family members shooting each other in the back of the head.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, vigilante justice.
Damn.
And George got off. Maybe she thinks she's going to get off. She's like, I had to do it.
Yeah.
And then she also says that George had done exactly what he'd accused Crefeld of doing. He's branding her as a fornicator, because she says, I never had sex with Crefeld. That's what she said. I never had sex with him once. And you're telling the whole world you had to kill him because he had sex with me. But I'm a virgin. I didn't have sex. So she's like, so I had to kill you for killing my honor,
Wow. Okay. I get that logic. That makes some sense.
I mean, it kind of does. And the papers were not feeling her.
Oh, yeah. The press was not as sympathetic to the woman.
They did not like that whatsoever. They were just like, how could she take the law into her own hands? And her worst offense by far was not appreciating the heroic deeds of her brother.
That was worse than killing her brother?
Yeah, that was the worst deed. Not appreciating that he murdered for her. So the Oregonian wrote that, quote, no punishment which the law could inflict on this phlegmatic and seemingly heartless creature is adequate for the crime. And yet, so monstrous was that crime that its enormity alone has raised a question as to the mental responsibility of the murderess. So Oregon's pissed. The papers are mad.
Right. They're like mad at her for worshiping a man and then mad at her for not worshiping her brother enough.
I think that's actually a really interesting way of putting it. That's totally true. They're like, we don't even care that you killed him.
Yeah,
you just didn't give him respect.
Him.
You should have worshipped him. Yeah. So now at the new trial for Esther and Maud that just happened immediately after this other trial.
How did Maud get involved?
Well, let me tell you, they revealed their murderous plan.
Okay.
So basically after George's trial and the not guilty verdict, they had rented a boarding house, like a room in a boarding house on 6th and Pike, which I've been there a million times. And between the two of them, they had less than $30. But they knew they had to take out George.
Yeah.
So they bought a gun and some bullets and went out trying to find George. Because before he left the trial, they were kind of celebrating in Seattle for a few days. So they were around, but they just didn't know where they were. So Maud wanted to kill him. That was like Maud's deal, but she just couldn't find him anywhere, which was super annoying. So they decided that Esther should be the one to kill him because she can get close to him. So if she can figure out when his train leaves, that she can get close to him. So that was their plan. That was it. So Esther was super, super in it with Maud. Wow. They did it together.
Got it.
So on the evening of November 16th in 1906, Esther and Maud are being held at the King County Jail awaiting sentencing. And Maud is playing a card game with some other women and they're having this great time. And then she goes back to her cell and she takes a fatal dose of strychnine and she dies in her cell. So
whoa. So this body count is just avalanching.
It's popping up there, right? So now Esther's the only one who's left alive. And just as an aside, her father, Maud's father, O.V. Hurt, honored Maud's last wishes by buying a burial plot in Lakeview Cemetery right next to Franz Crefeld, her husband.
So they were married together.
Married or buried?
I said married, which was also true.
I know. I was like, yeah, they were married, honey. That's his wife.
I swear to God, I'm paying attention. No, they were buried together, and the dad threw her a bone. I guess that's so sad. Like he lost his daughter. He's like, yeah, I'll bury her. I mean, that's so sad.
Well, I don't know. I think like if his daughter's happy, that's what she wants. I mean, I don't. She's dead.
She's dead, right?
She wanted to be buried next to this guy. It's like, all right, fine, get buried next to the crazy ass. Like, what? I don't know if that. To me, I don't know if that would matter, but I guess I don't know. My daughter has never taken strychnine. I don't have a daughter,
and I don't think strychnine even exists anymore.
Oh, sure it does.
What is it?
It's just poison, man.
Okay,
it's like rat poison.
Okay. I've actually never even heard it before until you said it just now. So,
really?
Yeah, strychnine. I don't know.
Well, you're going to be hearing a lot about that in these Muriel's Murders episodes. That is a big, big deal.
A lot of poisonings.
So Esther was found not guilty by reason of insanity, and she was committed to an asylum. The Hurt family kind of gathered a bunch of the old surviving members of the cult, including Donna, Esther's sister, and they settled in Oregon, not in Corvallis, because I think that had a lot of bad memories, but more towards the Garden of Joshua, which is kind of interesting.
Wow. So they're sort of starting a second cult?
No, I think that there was a lot of healing there. I think that there was a lot of, like, I haven't read this, but I would say there may be some guilt with the Hurts after Crefeld dies or some sort of healing. I mean, they definitely facilitated a lot of this stuff.
Right.
You know?
So it's sort of like emotional support / we're sort of guilty of like legitimizing this guy and now we're going to take care of you.
That's me editorializing.
That's okay. I accept that. I'm with that.
But they didn't start another cult.
Okay.
And he took care of them, I think, financially. And he was helping people kind of get back into society.
Great. No one was rolling around on the ground
People
anymore.
were stopped. They stopped doing it.
Okay.
And after 2 years, Esther Mitchell was released from the asylum and moved back with the Hurts.
Wow.
So they took her in.
Got it.
And she started a quiet life. In 1914, she remarried and she just settled down. So she was living near the Hurts and near her sister on the Oregon coast. And a little bit of time goes by. And on the night of August 1st, 1914, same year she got married, she had a nice dinner with her husband. She went upstairs to her room and she took a fatal dose of strychnine. And she was 26 years old.
Oh my God. That is So she died too. And you were right. You were like, hey, get used to strychnine. You're going to hear about it in other Muriel's Murders episodes, you little trickster.
I tricked you.
Oh, I'm going to put you in asylum. We need a sanity hearing. This lady was over here terrorizing me. Damn.
Yeah, well, that's the way it goes. But isn't that crazy? That's crazy. Yeah. Like the way that all unfolded.
Yeah, everyone's dead. I mean, not everyone, but damn, there was 2 straight up gunshots to the head at point blank range, and then 2 I'm by myself and I'm going to take this poison suicides.
Yeah. People are just like, damn, Corvallis, Oregon, man. It's got some history.
Shit.
Like that's their founding fathers. You know what I
mean? We're not saying anything about bad about Corvallis, Oregon. I'm disowning my wife's comment there.
And this didn't even make national headlines, this story, which I find mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Because there was another crime that had happened at the exact same time. It was the murder of the super famous architect in New York City. Oh. There's a woman named Evelyn Nesbit who's basically she's the original It Girl. She's like the world's first supermodel. So right around, in the early 1900s at the turn of the century, she was really famous for being painted. She was maybe 15, I think, when she started doing this. She was really young. She was a chorus girl. And they were like, you're the most beautiful woman in the world.
Yeah.
And they would paint her and she was kind of famous. And this architect, Stanford White, basically raped her when she was a kid. Yikes. And then kind of kept her. So he paid to get her teeth fixed and he did all this stuff and kept her for a long time. And he has this famous sex swing that she swung on. There's a picture of her on. Anyway, so she finally remarried. She married some guy.
Yeah.
And she told him about what Stanford White had done to her.
Yeah.
And so this guy murdered Stanford White in front of a packed Broadway audience.
Damn.
So that had just happened at the exact same time. So that was just making all the headlines.
So you've got this guy in Oregon who thinks he's going to be God. And meanwhile, the bright, shining light city of New York is birthing what people actually want to worship, which is like celebrity culture. Like the real gods, the real second coming of whatever is like springing up. And then they both get murdered at the same time. And the whole world is like, actually, we care about the New York fancy architect guy with the beautiful celebrity. We care more about one beautiful celebrity than we do about a town full of beautiful nobodies.
Well, it's just really interesting because I think this story is so crazy. I've heard the Evelyn Nesbit story a bunch, but the Holy Rollers is a little less. I didn't know about it. I know the phrase, but I didn't know that it was literally a cult where people rolled around on the ground. It's insane. It's so interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. I always thought Holy Rollers was I don't know what I thought it was. Maybe a gambling term or something. Like if you feel like you're on a hot streak.
I'm going to teach you all kinds of things you don't know.
Oh my God. Being led down a nefarious path by a seductive murderess or whatever they
house
call
wench. That's what I am. So I referenced Murder Out Yonder for most of this story.
Yeah.
This is a great book for old school lore. So if you love these types of old timey crimes, this is an awesome book to check out. Murder Out Yonder by Stuart H. Holbrook.
Also, Muriel went to the library for that one, and that looks like an old copy.
Yeah, I have a lot of old ass books, man.
Shit. Antiques. That for some reason makes the research more legitimate in my mind.
Yeah. I also referenced Baptized by Fire by Santi Elijah Hawley for the Portland Mercury. That's also a really great article.
Cool.
And that's it. And Wikipedia, baby.
Oh my God, Muriel. Okay, well that was a crazy story. So I guess the dirty little secret is everyone just wants to be a cult leader.
Yeah. And I feel like you're feeling this really hard. Like this is entertaining for you.
It was enjoyable. I don't know if it would feel as good as just rolling all around on the ground would feel. But Muriel, thank you for this terrible, terrible tale of murder.
You're welcome, sweet boy.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Muriel's Murders. As always, Muriel does all the research and then I do all the editing and post-production.
That's right. Thank you to us, and y'all can just get away. Just kidding. All right. To help support the podcast and to unlock exclusive episodes, please sign up for our Patreon at www.patreon.com/Muriel's Murders. All of this information is in the show notes. If you're confused about Patreon, don't worry. We can help you with that. Just let us know.
All right. I also draw and animate little cartoons to go with the podcast, and that dominates our social media feed. You can check those out at Muriel's Murders on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok.
And listen up, man. These animations are pretty awesome. Nobody wants to see our faces. But if you want to see like Nick's interpretation of what these episodes do to him in cartoon form, I would super recommend checking them out.
Okay, our DMs are open, and you can email us at murielsmurders@gmail.com. We want to hear from you.
Please rate and review Muriel's Murders on Apple Podcasts, because guess what? It really does help us grow. It's not fake. It's real. Listen, robots run our lives.
Yes.
Just do it. Okay.
So leave us a review and share this episode with someone you think might like it. We also want to thank Mario Castellini. He does the music for this. You can find him on Instagram at Castellini Beats.
Thank you to Ryan and Ryan, our amazing producers at Campfire Media.
And if you want more podcasts, if you want more Nick and Muriel, check out our non-murder podcast, Hella in Your 30s, every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts. We have like 3 years worth of back episodes.
Yeah, so if you really want to listen to us talk, man, there's a lot on there. Premium gold. In terms of us talking. All right.
Okay. All
Stay murdery. Stay spooky.
All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye.